Hey, good afternoon. Let's talk a little bit today about Florence, the tropical storm Florence, which actually is not yet named tropical storm Florence, but likely will be within the next few hours or by the end of the day today. It was just recently classified as a tropical depression, so it now has circulation, but the winds are just a little too weak for it to be classified as a tropical storm as of yet. The National Hurricane Center expects to classify it as a tropical storm in the next few hours. We'll also talk about a couple other things in the Atlantic as well, so this video was dedicated to the tropical Atlantic for the time being. So here's a satellite image. I'm just going to highlight a couple things that we're going to talk about initially and kind of give you orientation as to where things are on this satellite image. So if you look in the upper left hand, this is the Gulf Coast right here that I'm outlining in red. Here's Florida, and then the U.S. East Coast up to here. This goes up to about the Gulf Mid-Atlantic, so it doesn't include the whole United States. Here's Cuba right here. Really bad drawing of it, but there's Cuba. Puerto Rico is right here. Coast of Mexico and then the coast of South America is here. And then Africa is over here. Hard to tell when this satellite changes from night to day and vice versa here. But so that is Africa here. So I'm gonna use different color. The two main features that we're currently watching is this one right here, this circulation right here, just off the coast, the west coast of Africa. You can see the rotation in that. That's what has recently been classified as now tropical depression 6. It was potential tropical cyclone 6, now tropical depression 6 as of this afternoon, expected to become a tropical storm by the end of the day today as it strengthens a little bit near the Cape Verde Islands, which are just to the north of this area. The other feature is the tropical wave. It's actually located near Puerto Rico in the Dominican Republic, which is actually right here. I didn't highlight it, but there's the Dominican Republic. This is a tropical wave, which is going to move this way, and not a lot of potential for it to develop into a tropical storm, but there is a little bit of potential, and either way, it will bring certainly rain to the southeast part of the United States, so we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Just an overview, too, about Florence before I go into some more details. Florence is expected to move this way and then curve kind of northwest and then eventually curve away from the U.S. That might be a little like this, but I'll get into the details of that a little bit later as well. But at this time, it's not expected to come close to the U.S. That has the potential to change, but it's not a very high potential at all. It's pretty. There's a pretty high chance that it will recur before it reaches any land. It may come close to Bermuda, but all right. So clear that. Let me just show you a couple other satellite images real quick, just in case you want to get an idea of some other things. So this is another satellite image basically showing the same area. I will outline really briefly here. Africa is right here, U.S. coast is here, South America coast is here. So we're looking at this tropical depression here, and you can see the spin and even more clearly, well, not even more clearly, but you can definitely see the spin here in the infrared satellite. But what you can see more clearly here is the convection. So the darker these colors, this is the infrared satellite, which basically measures the temperature at the top of the clouds, or whatever layer the satellite hits first. So if the satellite is looking at the ocean, it measures the ocean temperature. If it hits clouds, it's measuring the top of the clouds. So the colder the temperatures, the higher up in the atmosphere you are. If they're dark colors, like for example here, all these areas, pretty much clear skies as it's reading the ocean temperatures. So, in the way that these colors are shown is that the reds and oranges and blacks are actually the coldest temperatures. So they're the highest clouds. So we see in this tropical depression, just on the northern side of it, right here. Let me go ahead and, well, okay. Let me clear this. Just on the northern side of this tropical depression here in recent images, we definitely see some high convection flaring. Now it's going to stop me. There it is. Some high convection flaring on the north. I guess that would be the northwest edge of this tropical cyclone. Then but we see the curvature now, the rotation as the cyclone is getting a center established and definitely getting circulation going as well. This is our tropical wave here near Puerto Rico and Hispaniola, and we see often on convection firing as well. This goes back several hours to earlier in the day, but in the most recent images you can see them more convection firing, and especially as we get the afternoon hours, you see all that all right there. You saw it last second there before it restarted. All right, so that's the overall infrared satellite of the Atlantic. This is a same thing, but it's not a loop. It's a high resolution satellite imagery. So it's like I said, it's not a loop, but change the color over the southeast in Florida. You see, thunderstorms firing as is typically expected, especially at this time of year. Here's our tropical wave with thunderstorms firing over. Actually, most of the thunderstorms are kind of west of Puerto Rico and over the east side of Hispaniola, some on the west side of Hispaniola, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. And then as we go, this is actually enlarged, so I need to scroll over to the right here if I can. And then, so here in the eastern Atlantic, the south coast of Africa, that's where we see our tropical depression, and since it's not moving, it's a little higher scale, you can better see our convection. You see some pretty high clouds there in the black on the northwest side of tropical depression 6 out there, just west of Africa, about to become tropical storm Florence this afternoon, most likely, or evening. All right. This is the same image that I said before, but it's a really high resolution version of that. So as I zoom into this tropical depression 6, you get a pretty good image of it right here. Not a loop, but pretty good static image. And even here you can see these really high clouds and white firing on, I guess, they're kind of wrapping around the southwest side of the center. It's hard to exactly tell because, let me zoom back out, this image is taken by a satellite that is centered basically over South America, Eastern, North America. So anything here near Africa is at the very western, eastern limits of its range. So everything's kind of tilted. It's looking at this at a big angle. But it looks like the center of rotation is kind of like this. Like the center is somewhere around here. So this is kind of wrapping around the southwest side now as this convection starts to wrap around. All right. Enough satellite images. This is just, I'll show you what the National Hurricane Center is forecasting currently. Tropical storm warnings for the Cape Verde Islands just to the north of the center of Tropical Depression 6 as of this afternoon. They're forecasting it to become a tropical storm by later tonight. So these points are every 12 hours. So this is, approximately 12 hours. This is 2 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time, Saturday, 2 p.m., 2 a.m., 2 p.m., etc. And then after that, it goes every one day, 2 p.m. Monday, 2 p.m. Tuesday. So anyway, National Hurricane Center forecasting general
west track, then turning northwest. And if you continue this, it may go something like this, but that's still yet to be determined. This is just their current forecast cone. Although it can go outside the cone, and effects of the storm go outside the cone as well. But considering that it's going to be over open ocean, no land really to be concerned about it yet. It's not going to be heading toward the Antilles, and probably not Bermuda, although it could come close in the future. We will see that as well. You also notice from this image, this forecast, that National Hurricane Center keeps it as a tropical storm the entire length of its cycle. They actually just downgraded the forecast from forecasting it to become a hurricane due to it's expected to strengthen somewhere, early in its life cycle with favorable wind shear and sea surface temperatures, but as it goes a little further west, the sea surface temperatures become a little cooler, wind shear is going to increase a little bit, so it's not expected to strengthen as rapidly. And some of the models are now starting to pick up on that as well. And then the HWRF, which is the Hurricane WRF model, the Hurricane Weather and Research Forecast model, and the European model are two of those that keep it fairly weak. GFS strengthens it quite a bit. I'm 100% sure why it does. So let's look at let's go back. Let's look at the GFS model. Speaking of GFS model, so this is what the GFS model is forecasting. This is it's forecast for approximately now. Actually, about 2 hours from now, but that's the point. So this is a Luebcke-Eckstein Tropical Tidbits website, and this is the Atlantic Ocean. Here's the United States, East Coast here, Florida Gulf Coast, into Mexico and South America, Africa over here. So we're looking at our tropical wave, which is our tropical depression now, I guess. This is right here. By the way, this is our other tropical wave here that we're watching as it moves this way, and then our tropical storm moves kind of that way, and I'll animate this here in a minute so you can kind of see what's forecasting. The colors are forecast precipitation by the GFS model. The black lines are sea level pressure, so there's a high pressure here, low pressure here. This is obviously the tropical depression. So let me go forward in time here. Let's scroll up in order to do this. Okay. So I'll just move ahead a little bit here. This is now Sunday, and if you're watching our tropical depression, see it's moving west. It's now stronger and deeper. This is actually by Sunday night. It's stronger and deeper than it was just now. Kind of moving west here. Here the Cape Verde Island, so it's just south of there now, and moving just to the west, intensifying a little bit. Here's our tropical wave now approaching Florida on Sunday night. It's a tropical wave. This is rain, no circulation, so no close storm expected to occur, at least as of that point. And then we'll go forward in time here, and this is I'm watching both of these. So here is our tropical wave approaching now the Gulf Coast across Florida, and this is now Tuesday afternoon, evening, and it has moved toward the Gulf Coast. Mostly rain, like I said, no close air circulation, so not looking at storm surges, not looking at strong winds or anything, at least as far as the GFS. GFS has been keeping it fairly weak. The European's a little stronger on it, but still nothing to write home about. Then I'll show you the European forecast in a little bit. Our tropical storm now, well, by this point it'll be Florence, of course. GFS has it strengthening a little more, moving a little bit further northwest. Keep going forward in time. I'm going to keep those annotations on there so you can kind of see the track of it as it goes forward in time. And we're not worried anymore about this wave over here has long gone by now. This is next Saturday night, September 9th. Well, September 8th, and the night September 8th, early morning of the 9th. Now we have Florence here, pretty strong by GFS, but GFS is on the stronger side. And you see it curving away. So let's just keep going forward in time to show you what happens to it. And there it goes. It keeps curving away on the GFS forecast. This is forecast as of this morning's 12D model, but this is what the GFS has been doing every run. And you see there's a low pressure system here at the surface with a cold front extending here. That kind of helps to recurve it as well at the surface, as we have a cooler air mass coming into New England, Atlantic Canada, according to this model. This is early morning on September 12th, so long time in the future. If you're looking at the rest of the Atlantic Ocean, let me go back a little bit. Just kind of highlight the rest of the Atlantic Ocean. All back to near the current time. So I'm ignoring this wave and ignoring what will come Florence here for now. So here's another tropical wave. Forecast to come off of Africa next Monday, Tuesday, and GFS kind of weakens it, doesn't really do anything with it. Another one here coming out late next week, and again, not much. The GFS doesn't do much with it. The wave after that has coming out, and then it has a weak low. But by this point, it's September 16th, and the short story about what GFS does is it, after Florence, it takes a few weak waves off Africa, but none of them really survive that well. So this right here is kind of ignore that for now, because it actually, if you go backwards, it actually comes off of a low off the east coast here, and then strengthens over water, which is kind of unusual. And at a 16-day forecast, we just can ignore that. So let's go to the European model. See what the European model does. The European model is a little weaker with Florence, but also wants to make conditions a little more right for future tropical cyclones. And this tropical wave here now, eastern Hispaniola, it has that wave a little stronger. So, actually, this is a little bit further back. This is a few days ago of this model. So let me go back to go to the current time. So here's the current time this morning, and now we have here's Tropical Depression 6. This is as of this morning out here. Actually, this morning, pretty much in the whole area. And here's our tropical wave now in the eastern Hispaniola. So let's watch what the European does with these two models. The European model does with these two systems, and I just cleared it, which I didn't mean to do. So I want to keep those annotations on here. So go forward in time here. And here is Sunday morning. So on Sunday morning, here's our tropical wave approaching, nearing Miami. No cold circulation or anything. Here is what should very well be Tropical Storm Florence by this point. Keep going here, and okay, there is Monday. Our tropical wave now over South Florida. Florence a little further west, but still fairly weak. Now keep in mind these lines here are not sea level pressure. Actually, these are 850. No, never mind, they are. This is, okay. The colors are not precipitation. The colors are vorticity at 850 millibars. Vorticity is basically a measure of the rotation of the air. But these are still sea level pressure lines here. But this is now early Tuesday morning, and here's our tropical wave a little stronger on the European model. We actually have a well-defined, it's not a circulation, but a well-defined wave here approaching the Gulf Coast. Here's Florence here, and note how it's moving a little further west than the GFS indicates. Alright, I'll go one more Wednesday morning. Now look on Wednesday morning. Look what the European is doing here with this tropical system here in the Gulf Coast, southeast Louisiana. It actually has a little closed low here. So, and the European has been doing this. European has been consistent in strengthening this wave a little more. So there is a slight potential that this wave could become a tropical depression, or very slight that it could become Gordon, tropical storm Gordon, before it makes landfall. But it looks like it's just going to remain an open wave and maybe become a tropical depression, but nothing really to be concerned about. But for the Gulf Coast, well, even Florida, definitely rain to lots of rain with this wave coming through here, from Sunday through Wednesday, and then possibly looking at some wind along the Gulf Coast if it does strengthen a little more. All right, go back to Florence. Go a little further here, and this is next Saturday morning now, September 8th, and here's Florence according to European model, and it's curving northwest, but it's not curving as far northwest as the GFS is. And I will show you a comparison of the two models in a little bit. At least as for the 10-day forecast, which I'll get to in a second. So this is our 8-day forecast, I believe. Yeah, 8-day forecast, 9-day forecast, and 10-day. And then you saw there. Here's now Florence. Now it's strengthening Florence, and it's starting to move it more north, more northwest. So the European does get closer to Bermuda, which it's hard to tell where it is. I want to say it's somewhere in this area, but I think. But so the European is getting Florence a little closer to Bermuda than the GFS is, but it's still recurving it, and this is as far out as the European model gets it, but it will probably still take it this way. And I'll show you why it's expected to recurve here in a minute. But let me, before I do that, I'm going to go back a little bit, and you may see something else on this map. I'll show you. Go back a little bit, show you where it came from. All right, so here is the European model. I'm going to ignore this two again, just like I did with GFS, and look at other tropical waves coming off Africa. Here's another tropical wave coming off Africa. This is the one for Monday, early next week, so Monday, Tuesday. We're still looking at this wave coming offshore, whether you believe the European or GFS. Both of them indicate this tropical wave coming offshore. And here it is on Wednesday morning on the European model. It's pretty weak, pretty broad circulation, but it could be a tropical depression if you believe the European model here by Wednesday. But and a lot of my videos seem to be spent time waiting for this to move. So by Thursday morning, that wave is a little weaker, and the European model, if you remember, the GFS model had another wave coming up late next week, and here's that wave on the European model late next week. Well, the European model has conditions in the Atlantic a little more favorable for development here. So this is next Friday morning, and keep going forward. Next Saturday morning, next Sunday morning, the 9th, and then Monday morning, the 10th, and it develops this tropical storm pretty well. So the wave coming up out of Africa late next week, the European wants to strengthen, so it wants to have conditions favorable again for development in this area. Now, if that happens and we have a tropical system here, there's no way of telling whether it be one of these or it's going to recurve again quite this far in advance. It depends on so many small-scale features. That said,
it also depends on where Florence is. So if Florence, depending on whether Florence is over here or up here, it'll affect how strong our upper level ridge is, which I'll kind of give you an indication in a few minutes. If Florence is further south, further west, it could there could be a weakness in the ridge, and any future tropical storms could just come right up through that ridge. I'll show you what I mean in a little bit. Otherwise, if Florence moves along, that ridge can strengthen and keep tropical storms to the south. So, let me just show you a few other things really quickly. These are forecast tracks by different ensemble members. So these are, this one's actually different hurricane models. Most of them have what will become Florence and some tropical depression 6, moving in general west track. I can't even draw. A general west track and then curving more to northwest. Some are a little further south, some a little further north, but for the most part, they actually agree pretty well. The GFS ensemble members, on the other hand, don't agree quite so much. The consensus is also for west-northwest track, west-northwest turning more northwest, but there's a lot of outliers. Some keep it low, some keep it high. When we talk about low and high, low just means like basically low on the map, higher on the map. So what it means. So further south is low, further north is high. Although these members recurve it earlier, these members just don't do it right away. So in general, usually the average is pretty accurate, or the most accurate in the long term. And intensity by all different models basically keep Florence in this tropical storm category once it reaches tropical storm status. Some have it up in hurricane, but most of them keep it in tropical storm. European ensemble tracks here, generally west-northwest, and then you kind of start seeing some curving at the end here for most of them. Some curve way early, but most of them, and some have it a little bit further south. For reference, this is this right here is Nova Scotia. So these are the GFS ensemble members on the right that I just showed you on another website. Wait a second. Okay, so these are also European ensembles, but at a shorter time frame. So these come from a website called weathernerds.org, which is another good website to get a lot of the, especially the European ensemble forecasts that you don't get in a lot of other places. So, let me skip that. That's not related to the Atlantic. So here is just a quick comparison of, for starters here, with the European model. This is a 10-day forecast of where Florence is going to be right there, with the center right here, and I'm circling it because then I'm going to show you the GFS forecast at the same time, and you can already see the annotations. So not a lot of difference, but the GFS is a lot stronger with Florence, and that little bit of a difference can make a big difference in I guess how far east it can get, whether it eclipses Newfoundland, for example, or if it curves out faster further away from land. It also makes a difference on the rebuilding of this ridge to the south, and I'll explain that here, which could affect any future tropical systems. So, move back to GFS. Okay. So why is Florence going to curve away? Well, let me go back to our current state of things. So here is our current, and we have this big general ridge across the whole Atlantic Ocean. So this area of high pressure, surface high right here,
So our surface winds come like this, basically follow the block lines in general, especially over the ocean where you don't have as much friction. Here's our tropical wave, by the way, right there. And here is tropical depression 6. Okay. Well, our depression, our storm, is going to be steered by these winds, both the upper levels, mostly upper levels, but even at the surface, and until it can become a little stronger. So that's the reason for our tropical depression to start out going west, as we have this ridge up to our north, and so we have our winds, upper level winds, basically east to west, steering our tropical depression that way. So it'll go that way because of our ridge, and then we're looking at mostly we have an up-level trough kind of here just sitting off the coast of Europe, and I'll show you in a couple more images, I guess. So that trough is expected to build start building to the southwest like this, and what that does is it starts causing this ridge here to basically break down, and so we have and kind of split into two. So we have still a strong ridge over the east coast, and then we have this piece of the ridge over in Africa there, and starting to be broken down here in the middle by this trough. Okay, so it's what we call the weakness. Basically, this part of the ridge becomes weak, and what that will do as that part of the ridge starts to become weak, and you see it really well right there. So here is this part of the ridge, and this strong part of the ridge over here. This is weak. This part of the ridge is not as strong, it's weaker, and so this will allow the tropical depression to start coming north right into that weak part of the ridge. And you see, on a couple of these, the red area, the ridge is not necessarily the red area. It's just these are continuous 500 millibar height lines. So just because you don't see, just because you see the red area doesn't mean that it's still like this is as strong as this area over here. Like you still see. I didn't mean to do that. You still see this area here is weak. Yeah, you have a little lower heights here. So this whole area of the ridge is not as strong as this area. Obviously, this area over the eastern United States, and then this area here. By the way, for those in the eastern United States, this means heat. So heat extending into September here. All right. So if we keep going forward in time, we see Florence is moving north into that weakness in the ridge here. And so we have this strong ridge over here, and because this area is not as strong, Florence moves right up into it, and then it can curve away as well as it starts getting into the upper level westerly winds up in these latitudes. So which will draw that again red, which helps to direct Florence back that way once it reaches that latitude. All right. So as we go forward in time, we see that's exactly what's happening. And now what we also see, let me go back a few frames. All right, here is, so Florence is moving north through that weakness, right? Here, 10 days. Stop it right there. All right. So here's our strong part of the ridge. Here's a strong part of the ridge. Here's another strong part of the ridge now building to the southeast of Florence. So really, this whole area is also kind of one stronger area. This is our weakness, but what's happening to our south is now this ridge is starting to rebuild across the whole ocean to the south of Florence. And as we go a little further into the future, one of the strongest parts of a ridge now is right here, right where Florence just tracks. Florence way up here to the north now, recurving off to the northwest east. And what this does is if this happens and the ridge rebuilds south of Florence, any more tropical waves that come off of Africa, if they can maintain themselves between wind shear and higher sea surface temperatures, and this ridge is strong in the north, they will keep further south. They will keep low, as we call it, because this ridge is strong. It'll block them. It'll block them from coming north. It'll keep them coming south, and those are the ones that we'll have to watch for coming toward the Caribbean, toward the Gulf, toward the U.S. East Coast, if that in fact happens. So go a little further into the picture and see the GFS keeping that strong ridge, other than this low, which is kind of an anomaly. Again, this is this morning's GFS run. Every run is different, especially as you get into long term. As a matter of fact, the afternoon 18Z model run's coming in right now, and it'll be interesting to see what it shows. I haven't looked at it yet, but I might really quickly before I end this video. So right before I do that, this will be the last thing I show you before I look at the latest model that I haven't seen yet, and this is this morning's European model. So only goes out 10 days. Doesn't go out as far as the GFS, but again, you see the same kind of thing. You see the strong ridge on the East Coast, and this trough here sitting off of Europe, kind of starting to interact with that ridge, start breaking it down. Here, by the way, is our tropical wave coming into Louisiana. I actually have a closed low there. So let's see. So this is now next Saturday morning, 8 days, 9 days, 10 days away. And the European is a little different in that the ridge over the over the United States is actually further to the west. It's not sitting along the East Coast, which is a very interesting difference. And that is one of the things that may be allowing Florence to come a little bit further west on the European model, because you don't have that strong ridge as far east, which keeps it a little further east. This weakness in the ridge actually develops further west, and so Florence doesn't turn until it's further west than it is in the GFS model. It has this strong ridge off to the east, as Africa and Eastern Atlantic, which is another reason here, because this ridge actually looks like it extends a little further west than the GFS model does, which makes too many arrows on this map and circles, which makes Florence turn a little later as that ridge builds a little further west. So the European model does approach North America with Florence more than the GFS, but it still keeps it far enough away that it probably misland, may get to Newfoundland if that happens, but it's still too far ahead. This model is 10 days in advance, right? This forecast right here is 10 days in advance. So, but what's interesting here is if Florence is a little slower, and stays a little further south as we get the next tropical wave, as the European wants to do, if this ridge can't build in behind this behind Florence fast enough, then any other tropical wave can just come right up into that weakness. If it does build in, then it can stay low. So still way too long into the future to figure out any other tropical waves. We're just kind of watching Florence right now, but just something to keep in mind about first wave coming off of Africa next Monday, Tuesday probably is going to be probably going to fizzle out as conditions won't be that right down here. But the second wave late next week is something that maybe we may be watching if the European model is right. But first we need to watch what Florence does and how far west it takes that curve, and to whether this ridge can rebuild, and that'll affect tracks of future cyclones as well. All right, so I'm just going to do one more thing in this video. That's just to look at the new model, see how long and how far it is out. It's out to 162 hours. This is the afternoon GFS model, and I'm just now looking at it for the first time.
and it looks very similar to this morning's model in terms of what it's doing with Florence. I keep calling it Florence, but it's not yet named Florence yet. But it should be pretty soon. So I just am assuming it's going to be Florence. But so this afternoon run that it's just not coming in of GFS takes it just like this, and so curves it earlier than the European model. Go back to the European model, valid right around the same time. European model from this morning, valid right around the same time. 162. Yeah. So European model much weaker with it. This is as of 12Z Friday morning. 12Z, which is 12 o'clock in London on Friday morning. So the European further west and weaker with it than this morning's and this afternoon's GFS model run. So I expect this to curve, to keep curving north and west once more of this model comes in. So actually, this afternoon GFS model, while this trough over here kind of weakens this ridge, we have this big trough here coming south of New England, which helps to weaken that ridge. It helps create that ridge quite a bit, as you can see in that previous image, especially here. So interestingly enough there. All right, and let's compare that real quick to this morning's. This is another thing we do. We compare different model runs, different models. So here is, ignore these lines up here, but this is this morning. So actually, the 18Z, these should be lined up because the way that I have it on my browser, the map should have loaded in the same area. So it's this afternoon is just slightly further west than this morning's model of GFS. The 6Z model, which is the overnight model run of GFS, had it about the same place as the 18Z run, maybe just a little bit further east. So it's just moving ever so slightly back and forth. But again, I think GFS has it too strong. Which is actually interesting that if it's too strong, this is last night's model run, so GFS is actually trending it a little bit further west, the east a little bit maybe, if any. So. And then this is and then finally this is the same as a day ago. These are all forecast values at the same time, but from different runs of the model, and that's all the same exact spot as it was yesterday, the same afternoon model run. So we look at that, but usually the stronger a hurricane is, the more it'll resist. It'll resist some steering flow, so it actually kind of surprises me that the GFS is curving it more, yet has it stronger. Although, like I said, if in comparison to the European model, this ridge does not extend nearly as far over the ocean as it does in the European, and this ridge over the eastern United States extends much further east than it does in the European, which keeps it right back here. So, definitely something to watch here in the coming days. All right, that will be it for now. Just talking about the Atlantic tropics today. Maybe in the future I'll start talking. I'll make another video here soon about just the general weather in the U.S. over the coming week. So have a great rest of your Friday, and I will see you next time.